All right, we'll be sharing with you the Punch newspapers here in Nigeria. It says PDP crisis, aggrieved NWC members protests, exclusion from presidential campaigns. National Women Leader writes protest letter, Vice Chairman chieftains lament. It says there's a deliberate attempt to sideline Southerners, claims Bode George. Wike Otom, Makinde others, not bigger than party, says pro-IU NWC member. Also, NEMA trains core members in disaster management. It's pretty important seeing, of course, the floods that have taken over many states across the country. Ekiti Speaker dies in cardiac arrest. Governor mourns. Also, Alaba market traders and hoodlums clash. One feared killed. We can also find here Lagos-Ibadan Expressway nightmare persists. Motorists demand alternative routes. And federal government records over 5 trillion naira deficit in 8 months. And we can also find here NSARS. States fail to compensate victims. Police warn protesters. Well, Nigerian students and dependents contribute £1.9 billion to the UK. And that's from a report on page 19. You can read more of that as Kogi State drags Dangote to court over Obajana ownership. These are the stories on the Punch this morning.
We're taking more papers this morning. Let's take a look at this Nigeria. The big story here says, stop harassing youths with laptops, Buhari warns. Stein's startup bill as federal government sets up 10 billion naira funds for young innovators. Microsoft to train 5 million Nigerians. 2023, Wike to chair 350-member Rivers PDP Campaign Council. The details of that's on page 15. Ekiti Speaker Afuye dies of cardiac arrest. Yeah, this is a sad story. Died in the hospital on Wednesday night. Senate probes Niger Delta Affairs Minister over alleged 480 billion naira projects. Abba Kyari, cocaine came from Ethiopia, says witness on page 24. We're still talking about this. And the final story this morning on this Nigeria is fuel subsidy to gulp 3.36 trillion naira in 2023 as debit profile hits $102 billion. All right, our debt profile keeps, rising. And that's what we can take this morning on the front page of this Nigeria.
Well, still here in Nigeria, the first newspapers comes next. It says there, alleged plot to siphon NDDC's 480 billion naira. Senate summons minister. Petition accuses Niger Delta minister of perfecting plans to collect money under guise it will be spent on special projects. Also, I'll expose those behind CBN seizure of Abia Benue loan, says Nyesom Wike. Suspend campaigns, let's help flood victims, Obi urges Tinubu, Atiku, and others.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting, actually, because from what, the reactions that I've seen, and of course, Peter Obi is the presidential candidate of the Labour Party here in Nigeria, which has, over time, turned into the third biggest political party in the country as it stands. A couple of months ago, they almost didn't stand a chance, but from what it looks like, it seems like they have, almost an equal chance with the two major political parties in the country. And from the reactions that I've seen to this, because I did get to see the video yesterday where he was speaking about this, it seems like he's putting the other two candidates on the spot now. Because if they continue to campaign, then it would seem like they are insensitive. Yes. And if they decide to stop, then it will be because, well, Peter Obi pushed it, or asked that they stop. So it feels like he's forcing their hand. They either will continue campaigning and be looked upon as insensitive to the plight of those people who they, are claiming to want to, be president over, or they stop. And then people are going to say, well, so you mean that you wouldn't have stopped if the Labour Party candidate didn't ask that you at least stop and pay attention to these people who are going through. So it's a very, very interesting campaign season here in Nigeria.
Right, as you've mentioned, it is an interesting campaign season. And I'd also like to mention that it's important that we have more conversations about the flooding, because we've been talking about it here on Breakfast Central. Yesterday, we had two victims from Anambra State, from Ogbaru and Anam local government areas. 2 days ago, we had someone from Yenagoa. But what we're seeing is that there's still lots of Nigerians that don't know what's happening. I met someone for the first time yesterday who is from Anambra State. And my first question to the person was, you know that 1/3 of your state is literally underwater now? And the person says, really? Why? So there are still people that don't know that there is a flooding crisis happening around the country. They're shielded from that here in Lagos.
They're not shielded. I think the main problem for me, in my opinion, is Nigerians have over time developed some type of
defense mechanism?
There's not I won't call it defense mechanism. You know, they just don't care so much anymore about disaster. They're desensitized to disaster. And this is why, because over time, in the last couple, let's say the last decade, we've had back-to-back 50 dead, 20 dead. If you remember a couple of days ago in South Africa, when I was reading the story of kids that have been murdered, they had their pictures. They had their names on the front pages of the Sowetan. But in Nigeria, over time, we simply just say 200.
Numbers.
15, exactly. So it feels like Nigerians over time have become statistics. And so when you hear these things every other Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday, and people still go to work the next day like nothing happened, then, you know, it doesn't matter if you say that 603 people have died in flooding in the last couple of weeks here in Nigeria. And there are still people who are completely, at this point, homeless. They have no idea, you know, where they're going back to, you know, after the flood.
And they're dealing with wild animals. Wild animals have gotten into their homes. You know, there are reports of infectious diseases breaking out in IDP
There would
camps.
be all of that. There would be all of that.
It really is a dire situation. And you've raised a very valid point. It's why when the Black Lives Matter movement gained popularity, one of the chants that we used to hear was, say their names. We need to add names to that because that then personalizes it. Like an Igbo adage says, when it happens to someone else, it's like it happened to wood. I don't know if I'd pronounce it well. That's how they say it. That when it's happened to someone else, it's like it's happening to a wood. So when you put names behind these lives that are being lost, then you can properly remember and take care of them. But we don't even have data collection, and we already have a problem. There are hardly any local governments in this country that can tell you, in Nigeria, that can tell you who are members of their local government, how many people number of people in the local government, number of people in the country. Do we even have an accurate number or an accurate prediction of how many people are in Nigeria? These are the issues. Let's move away from Nigeria. Let's head over to Uganda. Looking at the Daily Monitor, on the front page of the Daily Monitor, tax flight triggers rise in chicken and pork price. Uganda Revenue Authority's decision to seize hundreds of inbound trucks transporting raw materials for making poultry and animals feeds over 18 billion shillings tax arrears has ignited a meltdown in the businesses, leading to shortage and price hikes for dealers, farmers, and consumers. The details of that's on page 4 and 5. We also have experts now want primary school cycle reduced to 6 years. Was it not? Maybe it's more than that in Uganda. All right. UVRI resumes testing for Ebola after truce with Health Ministry. Police step up raids, arrest scores amid rising insecurity. Two more stories here. Uganda to have more dollar millionaires by 2032, according to reports. Okay. That will be an interesting one. And the final story here, my favorite column on the Daily Monitor, relationships. Love, sweeter after 25 years of marriage. I was going to ask you, but you cannot relate.
I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. All right, let's go to Tanzania this morning and see what's on the Citizen newspapers. It says here, regions to watch in population growth. With the government expected to release results of the 2022 population and housing census on Saturday, which Nigeria hasn't, carried out, census in more than, 15, 20 years now? Well over a decade. Yes. With the government expected to release results of the 2022 population and housing census on Saturday, analysts will be looking at data from 5 regions with keen interest. That's stories on page 2 of the Citizen. Also, Stanchat CEO opens up on business prospects. We can also find here Tanzania, Netherlands in financial inclusion pledge. That's on page 3 of the Citizen. Just a few stories, actually, that you can find on the Citizen.